The cage wasn't big enough for a dog, let alone a woman. Ayana sat curled inside it like a broken bird, her knees pulled to her chest, her spine curved against iron bars that had long since stopped feeling cold. After 4 days, everything had stopped feeling. The numbness had spread from her fingers to her soul. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had frozen on her cheeks 3 nights ago, leaving salt tracks that burned in the winter wind. The people of Silver Ridge walked past her like she was already a corpse. Children threw snowballs at her face. Women pulled their skirts away, as if poverty, as if being Apache, were something they could catch like fever. But Ayana didn't beg. She sat with her back straight, the way her grandmother had taught her, the way a Chiricahua warrior sits, even in defeat, even in a cage. A little girl stopped in front of the bars, maybe 5 years old, bundled in a clean wool coat. Her blue eyes were wide with the terrible curiosity of children who haven't learned to look away from suffering yet. "Mama, why is that lady in a cage?" The mother jerked her daughter's hand, pulling her away. "Don't look at the savage, Mary. She's where she belongs." Ayana closed her eyes. Savage. The word had lost its sting after 2 years of hearing it. After 2 years of Cornelius Blackwood's saloon. After 2 years of being called property instead of human. But it still lived in her chest like a stone, cold and heavy. The sun was climbing now, weak and pale behind winter clouds. Ayana had learned to track its movement across the Arizona sky. When it reached the church steeple, the afternoon crowd would thin. When it touched the Superstition Mountains to the east, the temperature would drop. When it disappeared entirely, the real cold would begin. She wasn't sure she'd survive another night. Maybe that was Sheriff Calhoun's plan all along. Let the winter do what the law couldn't. Let the Apache woman freeze to death in plain sight. A warning to anyone else who thought they could run from their legal obligations. Legal. The word tasted like ash. There was nothing legal about what Cornelius Blackwood had done, about the papers he'd forged, about the massacre he'd ordered. But the law didn't care about truth when money spoke louder. Ayana was drifting in and out of consciousness when she heard the wagon. At first, she didn't look. Wagons came through Silver Ridge all the time, miners and merchants, and men looking to strike it rich in the silver veins that gave the town its name. None of them ever stopped for her. They looked through her, past her, around her. She'd become invisible, the way her people had always been invisible to white eyes. But then she heard something else. Children's voices, high and bright in the winter air. "Papa, look at that. Papa, there's a lady." "Papa, why is she in a cage?" Ayana lifted her head. The movement sent pain shooting down her neck, muscles locked from 4 days of not moving. But she forced herself to look. The wagon had stopped about 20 feet away. It was a simple thing, rough timber and worn wheels, the kind a trapper or hunter might use. The horses were mountain-bred, shaggy and strong, and on the driver's seat sat a man who looked like he'd been carved from the mountains themselves. He was tall, she could tell even sitting down, broad-shouldered under a thick coat of animal hide. His hair was dark brown with threads of red, long enough to touch his shoulders, pulled back and tied with leather cord. But it was his beard that caught her attention. Dense and wild, covering half his face, the kind of beard a man grows when he lives too far from civilization to care about appearances. A mountain man. She'd seen his kind before, back when her people still controlled these lands, back when the Chiricahua Apache were free. They were different from the townspeople, the mountain men. They respected the land. They understood survival. They knew that nature didn't care about the color of your skin. 5 little girls sat in the back of the wagon, bundled in blankets and furs, their breath making white clouds in the cold air. The youngest one, maybe 5 or 6, tugged on her older sister's sleeve. "Abby, is she hurt?" "I don't know, Sari. Don't stare." But the mountain man was staring. His eyes were blue, the kind of blue that comes from spending years squinting at distant horizons. They were tired eyes, sad eyes, but there was something else in them too, something that looked like recognition, like pain. He climbed down from the wagon slowly, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. Up close, Ayanna could see he was even bigger than she'd thought. 6 feet, and then some, with the kind of muscle that comes from hard labor, from splitting wood and hauling water, and surviving winters in the high country. His hands were scarred and calloused, working hands, honest hands. He walked toward the cage without hurrying, without hesitation. When he got close enough, he crouched down so he was at eye level with Ayanna. And for the first time in 4 days, someone actually looked at her, really looked at her, not through her, not past her, at her. "How long?" His voice was deep, roughened by weather and silence, the voice of a man who didn't waste words. Ayanna tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. She swallowed hard, tasting blood and dirt, and tried again. 4 days. His jaw tightened under that wild beard. She saw his eyes move across her face, down to her arms where the sleeves had ridden up, exposing the scars on her left forearm. Old scars, from whips and worse. His eyes darkened. "They give you water?" "Yesterday morning, a cupful." "Food?" "No." Something dangerous flickered across his face. He stood and turned toward the land office where Sheriff Nathan Calhoun was leaning against a post, watching the exchange with cold amusement. "This your doing?" The mountain man's voice carried across the street. Calhoun pushed off the post and walked closer, his belly preceding him, his badge catching the weak winter light. "Sure is. Elijah Coulter, ain't it? Heard you bought the old Peterson place up in the mountains." "I did." "Well then, welcome to Silver Ridge." Calhoun gestured at Ayanna like she was a circus attraction. "See, you've met our local lesson in civic responsibility." "Is that what you call it?" "Vagrant. Apache trash. Caught her 4 days back. Escaped from legal servitude to Mr. Cornelius Blackwood. This is how we handle her kind around here." "By locking them in a cage to freeze to death?" "By teaching them a lesson about property rights and the rule of law." Elijah Coulter stared at the sheriff for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. The clink of coins was loud in the cold air. "How much to let her out?" Calhoun blinked. "What?" "The woman. How much to open that cage and let her walk?" "She ain't for sale, Coulter. She's serving a sentence." "Everything's for sale, Sheriff. Name your price." Calhoun laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that made the 5 girls in the wagon huddle closer together. "You want to buy yourself a vagrant, Coulter? What for? Your 5 girls ain't enough to warm your bed?" Elijah moved so fast, Ayanna barely saw it. One moment he was standing 3 feet from Calhoun. The next, he had the sheriff pinned against the land office wall, his forearm pressed against the fat man's throat. "Watch your mouth," Elijah said quietly, his voice low and deadly. "Those are my daughters you're talking about." "Get off me!" Calhoun's face was turning red. "Name your price, right now, or I break your neck right here in front of your whole town." The crowd that had been watching from a distance suddenly went very still. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was violence, real and immediate, the kind that ended with bodies in the street. $30, Calhoun choked out. $30, and she's yours." Elijah let him go. Calhoun stumbled forward, gasping for air, his hand going to his throat. "You're crazy," he spat. "Crazy as a kicked dog." Elijah pulled money from his pouch and counted out the bills. He held them toward Calhoun without looking at him. "Open the cage." "You're making a mistake, Coulter. A damn big mistake." "I said open it." Calhoun's face twisted with fury, but he pulled a keyring from his belt and stomped toward the cage. He jammed the key into the padlock with more force than necessary and yanked it open. "Fine, take her. But when she robs you blind or runs off with whatever you got worth taking, don't come crying to me." Ayanna tried to move, but her body wouldn't cooperate. 4 days, folded into that cramped space, had left her muscles useless. She managed to shift forward a few inches, but when she tried to stand, everything gave out. Elijah caught her. His arms swept her up like she weighed nothing, one around her back, the other under her knees. He held her against his chest, and Ayanna felt warmth for the first time in 4 days. Real warmth, radiating from this stranger who had just paid $30 for a woman he'd never met. "I've got you," he said quietly, "just for her. You're safe now." Ayanna wanted to respond, wanted to thank him, but her throat closed up, and all that came out was a sound that might have been a sob. She who hadn't cried in 2 years, who'd survived Cornelius Blackwood's saloon with her spirit intact, who'd sat in this cage for 4 days without begging for mercy. The kindness broke something in her that cruelty never could. Elijah carried her to the wagon. The 5 girls scooted back to make room, their young faces serious and worried. The oldest one, maybe 13 or 14, immediately reached for blankets. "Papa, she's freezing." "I know, Becca. Cover her up. All of you. Keep her warm." They moved quickly, these mountain girls. Blankets appeared from nowhere, tucked around Ayanna's shaking body. The youngest one pressed against her side, sharing her small warmth. "Don't be scared," the little girl whispered. "Papa's going to take care of you. Papa takes care of everybody." Elijah climbed into the driver's seat and gathered the reins. Calhoun started forward. "Wait just a minute, Coulter. We're not done here." "We're done." Elijah didn't turn around. "You have your money. I have what I came for." "What you came for?" "You came for fence posts and feed, not some vagrant Indian." "Changed my mind." He snapped the reins, and the wagon lurched forward. As they rolled out of Silver Ridge, Ayanna looked back and saw Sheriff Calhoun still standing by the empty cage, his face twisted with something between rage and confusion. The cage door swung open in the wind, creaking on its hinges, empty now. A monument to cruelty that had lost its victim. For the first time in 4 days, Ayanna was free. The wagon rolled west along a road that cut through snow-covered prairie. The girls had surrounded Ayanna like a protective wall, their small bodies adding warmth to the blankets piled over her. "I'm Becca," the oldest one said. She had her father's dark hair and serious eyes. "That's Joanna. We call her Jo. That's Margaret. We call her Maggie. That's Catherine. She's Katie. And you already met Sari." Ayanna tried to smile, but her face was too frozen. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "Here." Joe produced a canteen from somewhere. "Drink slow. Papa says if you drink too fast when you're real thirsty, it makes you sick." The water was cool, but not cold. Ayanna took small sips, feeling it spread through her body like life returning to dead limbs. It was the sweetest thing she'd ever tasted. "What's your name?" Maggie asked. She looked about 9, with pale hair and watchful eyes. "Ayanna." "Ayanna," Sari repeated, pronouncing it wrong. "Anna?" Despite everything, Ayanna felt that stone in her chest shift slightly. "Close enough." Elijah's voice carried from the front of the wagon. "How are you doing back there?" "Miss." He'd called her Miss, like she was someone worth respecting, like she was human. "Better," Ayanna said. "Thank you. Thank you for what you did back there." "Don't thank me yet. We've got 2 hours of riding ahead, and I can't guarantee the girls won't talk your ear off." "Papa," Joe protested, "we're being helpful." "I know you are, sweetheart." Ayanna pulled the blankets tighter and watched the landscape roll by. The cold was starting to ease, replaced by the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who'd been running on fear for too long. But beneath the exhaustion, something else was stirring. Something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. "Can I ask you something?" She didn't know why she was talking. Maybe because silence felt too loud. Maybe because she needed to understand. "Go ahead." "Why did you stop? Everyone else just walked past. Why you?" Elijah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "Because my wife would have stopped. And even though she's been gone 3 years, I still try to do what she would have done." "I'm sorry. About your wife." "Me too." He glanced back at his daughters. "But she left me these 5, and that's more than most men get. I just try to raise them the way she would have wanted." Sari tugged on Ayanna's sleeve. "Mama's in heaven," she said matter-of-factly. "But she watches us from the stars. Papa told us. She's the brightest one, right up there next to the moon." Ayanna looked at this 5-year-old child who'd lost her mother, but still believed in stars and heaven and fathers who kept promises. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "Papa says when we miss her real bad, we should look up, and she'll be there, shining down, making sure we're okay." Ayanna thought about her own mother, about the day the cavalry came, about the massacre at the hands of Luther Blackwood and his soldiers. She thought about her father, the medicine man Kuruk, fighting until his last breath. She thought about the 30 people who died that day, including children younger than Sari. Were they stars too? Or just ghosts, wandering a land that no longer wanted them? "Your mama must have been an amazing woman," Ayanna said. "She was," Elijah agreed. "The best I ever knew. Sarah, Cherokee on her mother's side. She used to say that all people are kin under the Creator. Didn't matter what you looked like or where you came from. We're all just trying to survive this hard world together." Cherokee. Ayanna's eyes widened. She looked at the 5 girls with new understanding. The dark hair, the high cheekbones, the way Becca held herself with quiet dignity. Mixed blood, children of 2 worlds, just like Ayanna herself had been before the world of her people was destroyed. "Your mother was Cherokee?" Ayanna asked Becca. The girl nodded. "She taught us some of the language before she passed, and the songs, and the old stories about Grandmother Spider and the first fire." Something cracked open in Ayanna's chest. These children, these white-looking girls with their mountain man father, carried Cherokee blood. They knew the old ways. They'd been raised to see people, not savages. No wonder they'd welcomed her without fear. "My grandmother knew those stories too," Ayanna said softly. Before everything." They rode in silence after that. Ayanna drifted in and out of sleep, her body finally relaxing now that it wasn't fighting for survival. Every time she woke, one of the girls would be watching her with concerned eyes, ready to offer water or adjust her blankets. At some point, Becca started humming. A hymn, maybe, or one of those Cherokee songs her mother had taught her. Something soft and slow that made Ayanna think of campfires and family and a life she'd lost 2 years ago. When the wagon finally stopped, the sun was touching the western mountains, painting the snow in shades of orange and gold. "We're home," Suri announced. "Miss Ayana, you can sleep in my room if you want." "She's going to have her own room, sweetheart," Elijah said. "The spare bedroom. But you can visit during the day." "But I want her close." "She'll be close enough. Now everybody out. Let's get Miss Ayana inside, where it's warm." The girls scrambled down from the wagon, their energy seemingly endless despite the long ride. Elijah came around to the back and held out his arms. "Can you walk?" Ayana tried to move her legs. They responded, barely. "I think so. Maybe. Let me help." He lifted her down from the wagon, steadying her when her knees threatened to buckle. His hands were gentle but strong, supporting without constraining. "Easy," he murmured. "Take your time." Ayana took a step, then another. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else, but they held. The house was modest but solid, logs and stone, with a wide front porch and smoke curling from the chimney. The girls ran ahead, throwing open the door and calling out about the guest they'd brought home. "This way." Elijah's hand stayed on her elbow. "Watch the step." Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and something cooking. Stew, maybe. Ayana's stomach cramped at the scent, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in 4 days. But more than hunger, she felt something else. Safety. Warmth. The sense of being inside 4 walls that wanted her there instead of keeping her prisoner. Becca appeared with a bundle of clothes. "These were Mama's. They might be a little big, but they're clean." Ayana took the clothes with trembling hands. Cherokee dress, beautifully made, decorated with symbols she recognized from her grandmother's teachings. Protection, journey, new beginnings. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll take good care of them." "They're yours now," Becca said simply. "Mama would have wanted you to have them." Before Ayana could respond, Joe appeared with a steaming bowl. "Stew's ready. Eat slow, though. You haven't had food in a while. Papa says if you eat too fast after starving, you get sick." Ayana took the bowl and just held it for a moment, letting the warmth seep through the ceramic into her frozen fingers. Then she took one bite, then another. It was venison and root vegetables, simple and perfect. The best thing she'd ever tasted. "Good?" Maggie asked, hovering nearby. "So good," Ayana's voice cracked. "So very good." While she ate, the girls bustled around preparing beds and heating water for washing. Elijah sat in a chair across the room, watching everything with those tired, sad eyes. When Ayana finally set down the empty bowl, she felt almost human again. "There's a bedroom at the end of the hall," Elijah said. "It's small, but it's private. You can stay there as long as you need." "I can't just... I should work. Earn my keep." "We'll talk about that tomorrow. Tonight, you rest." "But Ayana looked around at these people who'd taken her in, fed her, clothed her, asked nothing in return. "I don't know how to thank you. Any of you." "You don't have to," Becca said. And for a moment she looked exactly like Ayana imagined Sarah must have looked. Wise beyond her years, kind to her core. "Mama always said kindness isn't something you pay back. It's something you pass forward." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Ayana stood alone in what was somehow now her room. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to fall to her knees and thank the Creator or curse him or something, anything to release the pressure building in her chest. Instead, she walked to the small basin and looked at her reflection in the mirror above it. The face that stared back was barely recognizable. Gaunt cheeks, cracked lips, eyes that looked 100 years old. But she was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. Ayana washed her face with the warm water, scrubbing away 4 days of dirt and tears and despair. She changed into Sarah's Cherokee dress. It was indeed too big, but it felt like the finest silk against her skin. Then she crawled into the bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin, and listened to the sounds of the house settling around her. Children's voices, soft and cheerful. Elijah's low murmur answering questions. The crackle of the fire. The creak of floorboards. Normal sounds. Family sounds. Sounds Ayana had forgotten existed. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. And for the first time in 2 years, she slept without nightmares. Ayana woke to the smell of bacon frying. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft. The room was too warm. The silence was too complete. Then everything came rushing back. The cage, the cold, the mountain man who'd paid $30 to set her free. She sat up slowly, her body protesting with every movement. 4 days in that iron box had left her muscles screaming and her joints locked. But she was alive. She was warm. She was safe. The door opened a crack, and Sari's small face appeared. "She's awake, Papa. She's awake." Before Ayana could respond, the little girl had disappeared, and she could hear footsteps running through the house. Ayana pushed herself out of bed and found a brush on the wash stand. She ran it through her tangled hair, trying to make herself presentable. The woman in the mirror still looked like a ghost, but at least she was a cleaner ghost than yesterday. When she emerged into the main room, all 5 girls were already at the table. Elijah stood by the stove, turning bacon in a skillet, his broad back to the room. He looked different in the morning light, less like a wild man and more like a father. His hair was still tied back, his beard still untamed, but there was gentleness in the way he moved. "Morning," he said, without looking up. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I have in years." "Good. Sit down. Food's almost ready." Ayana took the empty chair at the end of the table. Sari immediately scooted closer, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Miss Ayana, can you braid hair? Becca braids mine, but she pulls too hard." "I do not," Becca protested from across the table. "You do too. It hurts." "That's because you won't sit still." Elijah set a plate in front of Ayana. Bacon, eggs, fresh bread with butter. More food than she'd seen in weeks. Her hands shook as she picked up the fork. "I can braid hair," Ayana said quietly, "if you'd like." Sari beamed. "See, Becca? Miss Ayana will do it." "After breakfast," Elijah said firmly. "Eat first, everyone." They ate in comfortable chaos, the girls talking over each other, Elijah occasionally interjecting to settle disputes or remind someone to use their napkin. Ayana watched it all with a strange ache in her chest. "This is what family looks like," she thought. "This is what I never had, even before the massacre." When the plates were cleared, Elijah sent the younger girls to do their morning chores and asked Ayana to stay behind. Her stomach dropped. Here it comes, she thought. The conditions. The price. Nothing was ever truly free. "We need to talk," Elijah said, settling into a chair across from her. Ayana's hands twisted in her lap. "All right?" "I meant what I said last night. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. But I'm guessing you've got questions, maybe concerns." "A few?" "Ask them." Ayana hesitated. Then the words came out in a rush. "Why did you really buy me? And don't say because it was the right thing. Nobody spends $30 on a stranger just because it's right." Elijah was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes distant. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "My wife, Sarah, she died 3 years ago. Cholera took her in 4 days. He paused, his jaw working. "I was an Army scout back then, stationed at Fort Apache. Spent my whole life thinking I could protect people. But I couldn't protect her. Couldn't do a damn thing but watch her die. And our boy, Jacob, 5 years old, went the same day." Ayana's throat tightened. She understood that kind of loss. The helplessness of watching death take the people you love. "After they were gone, I couldn't stay at the fort, too many memories. So I took the girls and came up here, bought this land, told myself I was starting over." His eyes met hers. "But I wasn't really living, just going through the motions, trying to keep the girls fed and clothed without actually being present." "What changed?" "You." Ayana blinked. "Me?" "When we rolled into Silver Ridge yesterday, I saw you in that cage, and something woke up inside me. Something that's been dead for 3 years. His hands clenched on the table. "I saw a human being treated worse than an animal, and I realized I could either walk past like everyone else, or I could do what Sarah would have done." "And what's that?" "Fight." His eyes held hers. Sarah never walked past injustice, never looked away from someone who needed help. She used to say that kindness wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing a person could do. Ayana felt tears prick her eyes. "So you didn't buy me because it was right. You bought me because your wife's voice was in your head, telling you to stop being a coward." Something like that. The silence stretched between them. Then Ayana said, "I need to tell you the truth. About who I am, what I'm running from." Elijah's expression didn't change. "I'm listening." "I'm Chiricahua Apache, daughter of Karuk, a medicine man." Ayana took a breath. 2 years ago, my people had land near here. Good land. We'd been there for generations. But it had something else, too. Silver. Maybe gold. The white men wanted it. They always do. When I wouldn't tell him because I truly didn't know, he had Luther remind me who owned me. She pushed up the sleeve of Sarah's dress, showing the scars on her left forearm. Long, parallel lines from a whip. Elijah's face went hard as stone. "I escaped 6 months ago. Made it as far as the edge of town before Sheriff Calhoun caught me. That's when they put me in the cage." Ayana met his eyes. "Cornelius Blackwood will come for me. He doesn't let go of what he considers his property. And if he finds me here, he'll destroy you. Your home. Maybe your daughters. That's what he does to people who get in his way." Elijah stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered mountains. When he turned back, his voice was calm, certain. "Then we'll deal with him when he comes. You don't understand. He's dangerous. He has money, influence, men who work for him. The law is on his side. The law put you in a cage for being poor and Apache. I don't give a damn what the law says." Elijah crossed his arms. "I was an Army scout for 10 years. I've faced down Comanche raiders and deserters, and men who thought their rank made them gods. A businessman from Silver Ridge doesn't scare me." "He should." "Maybe. But right now, what matters is that you're safe. You've got a roof over your head and food in your belly. The rest we'll figure out as it comes." Ayana stared at this mountain man, who spoke of facing down killers like it was nothing. "I'll work," she said. "Whatever you need. Cooking, cleaning, mending, watching the girls. I won't take charity." "I know you won't. And there's plenty of work to do around here. But today, you rest. Build your strength back up. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the rest." "Mr. Coulter." "Eli." He paused at the door. "My name's Eli. The girls call me Papa, but you can call me Eli." He left before she could respond. Ayanna sat alone at the table, her hands still trembling. What kind of man was this? What kind of person saw a stranger in a cage and decided to tear apart his own life to save her? She didn't know. But for the first time in 2 years, she wanted to find out. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Ayanna woke at dawn and helped Becca with breakfast. She braided Cerie's hair without pulling, teaching the little girl Apache songs while she worked. She mended shirts with torn seams and socks with holes worn through. She learned which chores belonged to which girl and how to keep them from fighting over who got to feed the chickens. The girls accepted her easily, the way children accept new things when those things are kind. Cerie attached herself to Ayanna like a shadow, following her everywhere and chattering constantly about everything and nothing. Maggie showed her drawings she'd made on slate boards, careful sketches of horses and birds, and the mountains in the distance. Katie asked questions about Apache medicine, about which herbs healed wounds and which ones brought down fever. Joe was harder to reach. She watched Ayanna with careful eyes, evaluating, testing. She'd been the one taking care of her sisters since Sarah died, and she wasn't about to hand that responsibility to a stranger without proof it was safe. Ayanna understood. She'd been the same way once, before Blackwood broke her. On the third night, Ayanna found Becca sitting alone on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. "Can't sleep?" Ayanna asked, settling beside her. Becca was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "It's been 3 years since Mama died. 3 years and 2 months and 4 days. Ayanna didn't respond, just waited. "Papa says time heals everything, but I don't think that's true. I think time just makes you better at hiding how much it still hurts." Becca pulled the blanket tighter. "Do you think that's bad? That I'm still this sad after 3 years?" "I think grief doesn't have a timeline," Ayanna said carefully. "I think you miss her because you loved her. And that's not something that goes away just because the calendar changes. Sometimes I forget things, small things like the exact sound of her laugh or the way she smelled after she'd been baking." Becca's voice cracked. "I'm scared I'll wake up one day and not remember her at all." Ayanna reached over and took the girl's hand. "Tell me about her." "What?" "Tell me about your mother. What was she like? What did she love? What made her laugh?" For a moment, Becca seemed frozen. Then the words started spilling out. Stories about Sarah Coulter, her kindness and her strength, her terrible singing and her beautiful quilts, the way she'd dance with the girls in the kitchen and read them stories by firelight, how she'd taught them Cherokee words and told them they were children of 2 worlds, and that made them twice as strong, not half as much. Ayanna listened to it all, and when Becca finally ran out of words, she was crying. But her face looked lighter than it had in days. "Thank you," she whispered, "for listening." "Any time," Ayanna said. "I mean it, Becca. Any time you need to talk about her, I'm here." They sat together in the darkness, watching the stars wheel overhead in the winter sky. And something shifted between them. Not trust exactly, not yet, but the beginning of it, the first fragile thread of connection. Eli found them there an hour later, both shivering, but neither willing to go inside. "You're going to freeze," he said, but his voice was gentle. "We're talking about Mama," Becca said simply. Eli's expression flickered. Pain, maybe, or something deeper. "That's good," he said quietly. "She deserves to be remembered." He stood with them for a moment, looking up at the same stars his daughter had been watching. "Sarah used to say that people we love don't really leave us. They just move somewhere we can't see yet." His voice roughened. "I don't know if I believe that, but I hope it's true." He went back inside without another word. Becca turned to Ayanna with something new in her eyes. "He doesn't talk about her," she said. "Not ever, not even to us. Maybe he hasn't found the right person to talk to yet." "Maybe." Becca stood and gathered her blanket. "Miss Ayanna?" "Yes?" "I'm glad Papa found you, even if you were in a cage." She disappeared into the house. Ayanna sat alone on the porch for a long time, thinking about a woman she'd never met, who'd somehow shaped everything good about this family. And she wondered if Sarah Coulter had known, before she died, just how much light she'd left behind. The letter arrived on the 10th day. Eli had ridden into Silver Ridge for supplies, leaving Ayanna with the girls. It was mid-afternoon when he came back, his face set like stone and an envelope clutched in his hand. The girls knew something was wrong immediately. Joe herded the younger ones into the bedroom without being asked. Becca hovered by the door, her eyes worried. "What is it?" Ayanna asked. Eli handed her the letter without a word. The paper was expensive, heavy. The handwriting was elegant and precise. "Dear Mr. Coulter, it has come to my attention that you are harboring a woman named Ayanna on your property. Miss Ayanna is a fugitive from justice, having escaped from a legal indenture contract. She is my property under territorial law, and I demand her immediate return. Should you fail to comply, I will be forced to pursue legal action against you for theft of my legally acquired labor. Additionally, I have men in my employ who are quite skilled at recovering what belongs to me. I trust you will make the sensible choice. Respectfully, Cornelius Blackwood." Ayanna's hands were shaking when she finished reading. "He found me," she whispered. "I don't know how, but he found me." "Calhoun." Eli's voice was flat. "Had to be. Probably sent word to Silver Ridge the same day I took you out of that cage. I have to leave. I have to go right now, before he comes here, before your daughters are in danger." "You're not going anywhere." "Eli, you don't understand. Cornelius will destroy you. He'll take everything you have. He'll burn this place to the ground just to make a point. And Luther, his brother, he's worse. He's the one who killed my father, who left these scars. He enjoys hurting people. Let him try." Eli walked to the fireplace and held the letter over the flames. It caught quickly, curling into ash. "What are you doing?" "Ending this." He turned to face her. "You're not property, Ayanna. You're free. Whatever claim Blackwood thinks he has, it's gone. The law won't see it that way. The territorial governor's in his pocket. The judges, too. He owns this whole territory." "Then we don't fight it in the courts." Eli's eyes were hard. "We fight it here, on our terms." "With what? You're one man. He has an army." "I have something he doesn't." "What's that?" "The truth, and people who'll stand up for it." Eli pulled out a piece of paper from his coat. "I sent word to an old friend, Tom Greyfeather, Navajo Marshal at Fort McDowell. We served together as scouts. If anyone can help us bring Blackwood to justice, it's him." Ayanna stared at the message. "When?" "Sent it 3 days ago. He should get it within the week. If he rides hard, he could be here in 2 weeks, maybe less." 2 weeks is too long. Luther will come sooner." "Then we prepare." Eli's voice was steel. "We fortify, we plan, and if we have to, we run. There's a Quaker settlement about 80 miles west, Canyon Springs, run by a pastor named Josiah Mercer. He helps refugees, people running from injustice. If we can get there, we'll have allies, a whole community that'll stand with us." "You're risking everything for me. Your home, your daughters, your life." Eli crossed the room and took her shoulders, his hands gentle but firm. "Listen to me. You're family now. I don't know when it happened. Maybe that first day when Sari called you Mama Aya. Maybe when Becca talked to you about Sarah. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a stranger and started being one of us. And we protect family. All of us. Together." Ayanna couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. This man who'd known her for 10 days was willing to fight an army for her. These girls who barely knew her were ready to leave their home to keep her safe. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Yes, you do. You survived 2 years of hell and came out kind. You saved Sari from getting sick with your medicine. You gave Becca someone to talk to about her mother. You made Joe laugh for the first time in months." His eyes burned into hers. "You're worth every bit of trouble that comes through that door. You hear me?" Before Ayanna could answer, the sound of hoofbeats echoed from outside. Multiple riders, coming fast. Eli's hand went to the rifle by the door. "Get the girls to the root cellar. Now!" But it was already too late. Through the window, Ayanna could see 6 men on horseback, surrounding the cabin. And at the front, face twisted with cruel satisfaction, was Luther Blackwood. "Hello in the house," Luther's voice boomed across the yard. "We've come for what's ours. Send out the Apache, and nobody needs to get hurt." Eli cocked the rifle. "Looks like we're doing this now." Ayanna's heart hammered in her chest. She'd run from this moment for 6 months, hidden, survived, but she was done running. If Luther wanted her, he'd have to come through a mountain man and 5 daughters who'd claimed her as family. "What do we do?" she asked. Eli's smile was cold and dangerous. "We show them what happens when you threaten our family." The standoff lasted exactly 3 minutes. Luther Blackwood sat on his horse like a conqueror, surveying spoils of war. 5 men flanked him, hired guns with dead eyes and ready weapons. They'd positioned themselves in a loose semicircle around the cabin, cutting off escape routes with practiced efficiency. "Come on out, Coulter," Luther shouted. "We can do this easy, or we can do this hard. Your choice." Eli stood at the window, rifle ready, his face carved from granite. "Get the girls to the cellar," he said quietly to Ayanna. "Root cellar behind the house. Sarah built it. Hide them there and wait for my signal." "What about you?" "I'll handle this." Ayanna grabbed his arm. "If you go out there alone, he'll kill you." "Not if I'm smart about it." Eli's eyes were cold, calculating. The eyes of a man who'd survived 10 years as an army scout. "Now go. Protect my daughters." Ayanna gathered the 5 girls quickly. Becca understood immediately, her face pale but determined. Joe clutched a kitchen knife, ready to fight despite her 12 years. The younger ones were scared but quiet, trusting their older sisters to know what to do. They slipped through the back door as Eli stepped onto the front porch, rifle pointed at Luther's chest. "You're trespassing," Eli said, his voice carrying across the yard. "Turn around and ride out." Luther laughed. "That's not how this works, Mountain Man. We came for what belongs to Mr. Blackwood, the Apache woman. Hand her over, and we'll leave peaceful. She's not here. You calling me stupid? We've been watching this place for 2 days. Saw her through the window. Saw her hanging wash yesterday. She's here, and you're going to give her up." The root cellar was 50 yards behind the house, hidden in a small depression near the tree line. Ayanna got the girls down the wooden steps into the darkness below, pulling the door shut behind them. Inside, it smelled of earth and old potatoes and fear. "Quiet," Ayanna whispered. "Everyone, stay quiet." Through the wooden slats, she could hear Luther's voice growing louder, angrier. Then came the sound that changed everything. Glass shattering, fire crackling, men shouting. "They're burning it," Becca whispered, horror in her voice. "They're burning our house." Ayanna pressed her eye to a gap in the door. Orange flames were already licking up the side of the cabin, black smoke billowing into the winter sky. Luther's men had thrown torches through the windows. The barn was next, the dry wood catching fast. And then she saw Eli running toward the barn, not away from the fire, but into it. The horses were screaming. "Stay here," Ayanna commanded. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." "Where are you going?" Joe's voice was sharp with fear. "To help your father." Ayanna burst from the cellar and ran. The heat hit her like a physical force, the roar of flames drowning out everything else. Eli had managed to get the barn door open and was leading 2 terrified horses out, their eyes rolling white with panic. 3 more were still inside. She didn't think. Didn't hesitate. Apache women were taught to face fire, to run into burning lodges to save children and elders. She grabbed a water bucket and soaked her shawl, wrapping it around her face, and plunged into the smoke. The remaining horses were in the back stalls, trapped by a fallen beam. Ayanna could hear them screaming, could feel the heat blistering her skin through Sarah's dress. She grabbed the beam, tried to lift it, couldn't budge it. Then Eli was there beside her, his face blackened with soot, his hands grabbing the other end of the beam. Together they heaved. The wood shifted, cracked, gave way. The horses bolted past them toward freedom. "Out!" Eli shouted. "Now!" They ran. The barn collapsed behind them with a roar like thunder, sending sparks spiraling into the sky. Eli pulled Ayanna away from the flames, both of them coughing, gasping for air. Luther was laughing, actually laughing. "That's what you get, Coulter. That's what happens when you steal from Cornelius Blackwood." Eli's hands clenched into fists, but Ayanna grabbed his arm. "The girls," she said. "We have to get the girls and go. Now." He nodded, the rage draining from his face, replaced by something colder. Purpose. Survival. They ran to the root cellar. The 5 girls tumbled out, their faces streaked with tears. Sari was sobbing. Maggie was silent, shocked. Joe's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the knife. "We're leaving," Eli said. "Right now. Everyone on a horse. We ride west." "But Papa," Becca started. "Now, Rebecca." They had 3 horses left. The rest had been trapped in the barn, burned alive. 3 horses for 8 people. Eli lifted the youngest ones onto the saddles, paired the older girls together. Ayanna ended up behind Sari, holding the little girl tight as they galloped away from everything they'd built. Behind them, the cabin burned. Everything Sarah had made, everything Eli had built in 3 years of trying to start over. Gone. Reduced to ash and smoke because of Ayanna. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but her words were lost in the thunder of hoofbeats and the roar of flames. They rode through the night, heading west toward the Superstition Mountains. Eli pushed them hard, stopping only when the horses were ready to collapse. When they finally made camp in a hidden canyon as dawn broke, exhaustion and shock had settled over them like a heavy blanket. There was no fire. Too dangerous. They ate jerky and dried apples, huddled together for warmth under what blankets they'd managed to grab.
"How far to Canyon Springs?" Ayanna asked quietly.
80 miles, Eli said. 4 days if we push hard, maybe 5 with the girls. Luther will follow. I'm counting on it. But these mountains are Apache land, your land. You know paths, he doesn't. Ayanna looked at the dark peaks surrounding them. She'd been a child the last time she'd traveled these trails with her people. Before the massacre, before Blackwood, before everything. There's a way, she said slowly. Through Tortilla Flat. White men don't use it. Too narrow, too dangerous. But I can get us through. Can you get us through in 4 days? Maybe, if the weather holds, if we don't run into trouble. Trouble's already here, Eli's voice was grim. Question is whether we run from it or face it. Sari was asleep in Ayanna's lap, her small body shaking occasionally with leftover sobs. Maggie had drawn pictures in the dirt with a stick, then erased them, then drawn them again.
Katie was organizing their meager medical supplies with trembling hands.
Jo sat apart from everyone, her bow across her knees, watching the darkness. And Becca sat next to Eli, her young face aged 10 years in one night. "Papa," she said quietly, "I saw Mama's quilt, in the window, before the fire took it." Eli's jaw worked. "I know, sweetheart. All her things, the symbols on the wall, the dresses, everything. I know. She's really gone now, isn't she? Not just in heaven, but her things, the things we could touch. They're all gone." Eli pulled his daughter close, and for the first time since Sarah's death, Ayanna saw tears on the mountain man's face. "We still have what matters," he said, his voice breaking. "We have each other. We have memories. Your mama's not in things, Becca. She's in you, in all of you, and they can't burn that, no matter how hard they try." They sat in silence as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of gold and pink, beautiful and terrible at the same time. On the second day, they found Red Skywalker. The old Apache appeared like a ghost among the rocks, so suddenly that Eli nearly shot him before recognizing the peaceful gesture of raised, empty hands. "Kuruk's daughter," the old man said in Apache, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "I heard you lived. Heard you ran from the white devil Blackwood." "Red Skywalker?" Ayanna slid from her horse, hardly believing her eyes. "I thought everyone from our band was dead or scattered." "Scattered, yes. Dead, not yet." He was older than she remembered, his hair completely white now, his face a map of wrinkles. But his eyes were sharp and knowing. "The spirits told me you'd come this way, told me to help." He led them to a hidden camp, a small cave that stayed warm even in winter. There was food there, real food, dried venison, pemmican, herbs for tea. The girls fell on it like starving wolves. "How did you know?" Eli asked, his hand never far from his rifle, despite the old man's obvious kindness. "The mountains speak to those who listen." Red Skywalker smiled at Eli's skepticism. "Also, I saw smoke 2 days ago. Big fire. And I saw 6 white men riding these trails yesterday, hunting something. I sent them east with false tracks." "You what?" Hope sparked in Eli's chest. "Old Apache trick. Make the ground lie. They'll be 2 days east before they realize they've been fooled. By then, you'll be long gone." Ayanna translated quickly for Eli. His shoulders, tight with tension for 2 days, finally relaxed a fraction. "Thank you," Eli said. Red Skywalker studied him carefully. "You are the widow man with Cherokee wife?" "Was. She passed 3 years back. And now you protect Apache daughter. The spirits smile on this." The old man performed a small gesture, a blessing in the old way. "Your paths were meant to cross. Your wife's spirit knew.
That's why she sent you to Silver Ridge that day." He turned to Ayanna, switching back to Apache. "Your father would be proud. You survived. You found family again, and you're leading them to safety, using the old ways." "I'm leading them to danger," Ayanna said bitterly. "Everything they had is burned because of me." "No, everything they had was burned because evil men exist. You are not responsible for the cruelty of others." Red Skywalker reached into his medicine bag and pulled out a small object wrapped in deerskin. "Your father gave this to me before he died. Asked me to keep it safe. Said if you lived, you'd need it one day." Ayanna unwrapped the deerskin with shaking hands. Inside was her father's medicine bag, the one she'd thought lost in the massacre. And inside that, folded together, were 2 items. The first was a piece of tanned hide covered in symbols, a map. The second was a folded paper document, edges singed but still readable. Official seals and signatures visible. "What is it?" Eli asked, pointing to the map. Ayanna's fingers traced the familiar markings. Apache symbols for water sources, safe caves, dangerous passes. And in the center, marked with her father's distinctive spiral, a location in the Superstition Mountains. "It's where my father hid the gold," she whispered. "The gold Blackwood killed everyone for." She picked up the second document carefully. "And this is Blackwood's deed. The one he filed claiming our land." Red Skywalker nodded gravely. "Your father broke into the territorial office the night before the massacre. He knew Blackwood was coming. He stole that deed to prove the timing. Dated the day after he hid the gold, the day of the attack. He died protecting both pieces of evidence." Ayanna stared at the deed. February 13th, 1876. The day her world burned. "This proves he planned it all," she said. "That's why Blackwood wants you dead," Red Skywalker replied. "Not just for the gold. For that paper. The gold Blackwood killed everyone for. 30 pounds of nuggets my father collected over 20 years. He was going to use it to buy freedom for captured Apache, to pay lawyers, to fight the land seizures legally." She looked up at Red Skywalker. "But Blackwood found out. That's why he brought the cavalry. He wanted the gold and the land." "Your father hid it the night before he died," Red Skywalker said. "Told me if Blackwood ever found you, you should use the gold for justice, to make them pay for what they did." Eli was staring at the map. "This changes everything." "How?" "Because now you're not just an escaped servant. You're a witness to murder. You have proof that Blackwood's land claim came from massacre, and you have the gold he killed for." Eli's mind was racing. Tom Greyfeather. If we can get to Canyon Springs, if we can hold out until Tom arrives, we can bring Blackwood to justice. Real justice. Federal court. You think the law will side with an Apache over a rich white man?
I think Tom Greyfeather is Navajo, and he's seen enough of Blackwood's type to want him stopped. And I think a map in your father's handwriting, proving premeditation for murder, might just be enough evidence. Eli looked at Red Skywalker. "How far to Canyon Springs from here?" 3 days, if you take the Apache trail through the pass. Dangerous, narrow, but white men won't follow. Can you guide us?" The old man shook his head. "I'm too old for that journey. But Kuruk's daughter knows the way. She walked it as a child.
He turned to Ayanna. "The spirits are with you, daughter. Your father watches from the stars, and your new family stands beside you. Trust in that." That night, warm and fed for the first time in days, the girls finally relaxed. Joe actually smiled when Ayanna showed her how to string a bow the Apache way. Maggie sketched Red Skywalker's face on bark with charcoal, and the old man was so moved he insisted on keeping it. Sari fell asleep in Ayanna's arms again, but this time she was peaceful, not crying, just breathing soft and steady, trusting completely that the woman who held her would keep her safe. Eli found Ayanna sitting outside the cave, staring at her father's medicine bag. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling beside her. "I was thinking about my father, how he planned for everything, how he knew Blackwood would kill him, but he made sure the gold could still do good." She touched the map gently. "He was a medicine man, a healer, but he understood that sometimes you have to fight. Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was. He told me once that the strongest medicine isn't in herbs or rituals. It's in standing up when it's easier to fall down, in protecting others when you could save yourself." Ayanna looked at Eli. "You did that. In Silver Ridge, you could have ridden past, should have, but you stopped. Sarah would have stopped. Maybe, but you're the one who actually did it." She took his hand. "Thank you for everything, for saving me, for keeping your daughters safe, for not giving up when it would have been easier." Eli's calloused thumb traced circles on her palm. "You saved Sari twice now. Once from hypothermia, once from that barn. We're even. We're family," Ayanna corrected. "You said so yourself, and family doesn't keep score." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Luther and his men were riding in the wrong direction, cursing and confused. Somewhere ahead lay Canyon Springs and the hope of allies. And somewhere in between was justice, if they were brave enough to reach for it. "Tomorrow we head for the pass," Eli said finally. "It's going to be hard, dangerous. Are you sure you can guide us?" "These mountains are in my blood," Ayanna said. "My people walked them for 10,000 years before white men came. I can get us through." "Then that's what we'll do." Eli stood, offering her his hand. "Get some rest. We've got a long road ahead." But before she could take his hand, Eli bent down and kissed her. Just once. Soft and brief and full of promise. "For luck," he said. "For luck," Ayanna agreed, her heart beating faster. When she finally slept that night, curled up with 5 girls who'd claimed her as family, and a mountain man who'd claimed her heart, she dreamed not of fire and cages, but of stars and freedom and justice finally served. 3 days to Canyon Springs. 3 days to outrun Luther. 3 days to prepare for the fight of their lives. But for the first time since the massacre 2 years ago, Ayanna believed they might actually win. The Salt River nearly killed them. On the 4th day of their journey, the river appeared before them like a silver serpent cutting through the canyon, swollen with snowmelt and moving fast. Chunks of ice floated downstream, grinding against rocks with sounds like breaking bones. Ayanna studied the crossing point she remembered from childhood. The water was deeper than it should be, faster than it had any right to be in February. "We cross here, or add 2 days going north to the bridge," she said. Eli dismounted and tested the depth with a long stick. 4 feet in the center, maybe more. The current was strong enough to pull the stick from his hands. "Can we make it?" Becca asked, her voice small. "We don't have a choice." Eli looked at the sky.
Gray clouds were gathering over the mountains. More snow coming. Luther's false trail won't fool him forever. We cross now. He tied a rope around his waist and handed the other end to Ayanna. I go first. If I make it, I'll secure this end. Then we bring the girls across one by one. And if you don't make it, then you take the girls north to the bridge. Don't wait for me. He swung onto his horse before she could argue. Keep them safe, Ayanna. That's all that matters. He urged the horse into the water. The animal fought him, eyes rolling, but Eli was stronger. They pushed forward into the current. Halfway across, an ice chunk slammed into the horse's shoulder. The animal stumbled, went to its knees. Eli nearly went over, but grabbed the saddle horn, righting himself. The girls screamed from the bank, but Eli made it, barely. He secured the rope to a boulder on the far side and waved them forward. Joe went next with Maggie, both girls silent and terrified. The rope held. They made it across, soaked and shivering, but alive. Then Becca with Katie. The horse slipped on the rocks but recovered. They reached the far bank safely. Ayanna was last with Sari. I'm scared, the little girl whispered. So am I, Ayanna admitted. But we're going to be brave together. Hold on tight, and don't let go, no matter what. They entered the water. The cold hit like a physical blow, stealing Ayanna's breath. The horse whinnied, fighting the current. The rope stretched taut between them and safety. They were 3/4 across when disaster struck. A massive ice chunk, bigger than the others, came barreling downstream. Ayanna saw it coming, but couldn't maneuver away fast enough. It slammed into the horse's hindquarters with terrible force. The animal went down hard, throwing both riders into the freezing water. Ayanna felt Sari slip from her grip, felt the current grab them both and pull them under. The world became a roar of white water and darkness and cold so intense it stopped thought. Her lungs screamed for air. Her hands found nothing but water and ice. Then her fingers closed on something small. Fabric. Sari's coat. Ayanna kicked hard, breaking the surface. Sari came up, gasping, coughing, her face already turning blue. The current was pulling them downstream, away from the crossing, away from Eli and the girls. "Mama!" Sari choked out, the first time she'd called Ayanna that out loud. Then Eli was there. He'd sprinted along the bank, calculating trajectory and current speed with the precision of an old scout. He dove in at exactly the right moment, exactly the right place. His arms closed around Sari first, heaving her toward the shallows, where Becca and Joe were already wading in to grab her. Then he went back for Ayanna. She was going under again when his hand found hers. His grip was iron and desperation. He pulled her up, pulled her in, dragged her through the shallows to the rocky shore. They collapsed together, both coughing up river water, both shaking so hard their teeth rattled. "Sari," Ayanna gasped. "She's alive. The girls have her." Ayanna tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. The cold had seeped into her bones, into her blood. Everything was going numb and distant. "Stay with me." Eli's voice cut through the fog. "Ayanna, stay with me." He was stripping off her wet clothes, wrapping her in dry blankets the girls brought, building a fire despite the danger of smoke, rubbing her hands and feet to restore circulation. "Can't feel anything," Ayanna mumbled. "You will. Just hold on." Sari was the same. Worse, maybe. The little girl had stopped shivering, which Ayanna's medicine training knew was a bad sign. Hypothermia. Advanced. "Skin to skin,"
Ayana forced out through chattering teeth. Only way. Body heat. Becca understood immediately. She stripped Sari down and wrapped her in blankets, with all 4 sisters huddled around her, sharing warmth. Maggie sang Cherokee songs their mother had taught them. Katie rubbed Sari's feet. Joe held her close and whispered fierce promises that everything would be okay. Ayana wanted to help, but she couldn't move.
Eli had her wrapped against his chest now, his body heat radiating through the blankets. He was talking to her, keeping her conscious, but the words were getting harder to understand. "Don't you dare die on me," he was saying. "Not after everything. Not now." "Not planning to," she managed. "Good. Because I love you, Ayana. I think I loved you from the moment you sat up straight in that cage instead of begging. And I'm not losing another woman I love. You hear me?" She heard him. Through the cold and the fear and the exhaustion, she heard him. "Love you too," she whispered. "Mountain man." Then darkness took her. When Ayana woke, it was night. She was wrapped in every blanket they owned, lying next to a fire that burned bright and warm. Eli sat watch beside her, his face haggard with exhaustion and relief. "Sari," she croaked. "Alive, sleeping. You saved her. Held on to her when the current took you both." "You saved us both." Team effort. He helped her sit up, gave her water to drink. "How do you feel?" "Like I drowned and came back." Close enough to the truth. Across the fire, all 5 girls were piled together under blankets, sleeping hard. Sari was in the middle, her face pink and healthy again, alive because Ayana had refused to let go. "We can't stay here," Eli said quietly. "We've lost half a day. But you and Sari need rest before we can move." "How far to Canyon Springs?" "If your directions are right, maybe 12 miles. We could make it in one hard push tomorrow." "Then we rest tonight and ride at dawn." Ayana took his hand. "What you said, before, about loving me. I meant it. I know. I just wanted you to say it again when I could remember it properly." Eli smiled, that rare expression that transformed his whole face. "I love you, Ayana, daughter of Karuk, Apache medicine woman, bravest person I've ever known. I love you, Elijah Coulter, mountain man with the wild beard and the big heart." She pulled him close and kissed him, properly this time. Not quick and desperate like before, but slow and sure. A promise. When they finally pulled apart, Becca was watching from across the fire, smiling, even in her sleep. They reached Canyon Springs at midday. The settlement appeared in a small valley, maybe 50 buildings clustered together with smoke rising from chimneys and children playing in the streets. An American flag flew over what looked like a church or meeting hall, and standing at the entrance to the town, waiting like he'd known they were coming, was a gray-haired man in simple Quaker dress. "Elijah Coulter?" the man called out. "I'm Pastor Josiah Mercer. Tom Grayfeather sent word you were coming. Welcome to Canyon Springs." Eli's shoulders sagged with relief. "Tom contacted you?" "3 days ago. Rider came through from Fort McDowell. Tom's pushing hard, riding day and night. Should be here in 2 days if nothing delays him." Mercer's eyes took in the exhausted group. "You all look like you've been through hell. Come. We have food and shelter." He led them to a small cabin near the center of town. Clean, warm, safe. Women appeared with hot stew and fresh bread. A Mexican woman named Rosa checked Sari and Ayana for lingering effects of hypothermia, nodding approval at the treatment they'd received. "You did good," Rosa told Ayana. "Skin-to-skin heat. That's old knowledge. Medicine woman knowledge. My grandmother taught me. She taught you well. Rosa's eyes were kind but sad. I know what it's like to run from Blackwood. My husband died in his mine 3 years back. Accident, they said. But I know better. He was asking questions about safety, about fair wages. Men who ask questions about Blackwood don't live long. A massive black man brought firewood. Name's Ezekiel Freeman, he said, his voice deep and gentle. Folks call me Zeke. I was property once, down in Georgia. Got my freedom and came west. Heard this was a place where all people were welcome. It is, Mercer said firmly. We built Canyon Springs for people fleeing injustice. For those the law won't protect. You're safe here. But even as he said it, a rider came galloping into town, his horse lathered with sweat. Pastor Mercer, 6 riders approaching from the east, armed men. They'll be here within the hour. Eli's face went hard. Luther found us. Then we prepare. Mercer rang the church bell, 3 sharp peals that brought people running from every building. Within minutes, the entire settlement had gathered. Mercer explained quickly. Ayanna and her family were being hunted by men who'd burned their home. The pursuers would be here soon, demanding her return. Why should we risk our families for strangers? A farmer asked, fear plain on his face. Because today it's them, Mercer said. Tomorrow it could be you. Evil doesn't stop unless good people stand against it. A woman stood up, middle-aged, Navajo features, scarred hands. My name is Sarah Littlefoot, she said. 2 years ago, I escaped from Cornelius Blackwood's trafficking ring. I was property, like this woman. Canyon Springs saved me, gave me my life back. If we give her up, we say our word means nothing. She looked directly at Ayanna. I vote we stand. I stand, Rosa said, rising. I stand, Ezekiel echoed, his massive frame straightening. One by one, people rose. Not everyone. Some stayed seated, too afraid. But 42 adults stood and declared they would fight. Then we prepare, Eli said, taking command with the authority of a man who'd led soldiers. Barricades at the town entrance, riflemen on rooftops, women and children to the church basement. We make this town a fortress. They had 1 hour. The settlement exploded into organized chaos. Men hauled wagons to block the street. Ezekiel distributed weapons from his smithy. Women gathered supplies in the church. Children were hustled to safety. Ayanna worked alongside everyone else, teaching the women basic first aid, showing them how to make bandages from cloth, which herbs would stop bleeding. Joe helped position sharpshooters on rooftops, her tracking eyes picking the best vantage points. Becca organized the younger children in the church basement, keeping them calm with Cherokee songs. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, Luther Blackwood and his 6 men appeared on the eastern ridge. Eli stood in the middle of the main street, rifle in hand. The entire settlement was behind him, 42 people who'd decided that some lines couldn't be crossed. Ayanna stood beside him, not behind, beside. Her father's medicine bag hung around her neck. The map to the gold was safe in her pocket. And for the first time since the massacre, she wasn't running. This ends here, she said quietly. One way or another, Eli agreed. Luther rode slowly into town, his men flanking him. When he saw the barricades, the armed settlers, his face twisted with rage. You're making a mistake, Coulter, all of you. That woman is property, legal property. Hand her over. Mercer stepped forward. There is no property here, only free people, and we will not give up one of our own. Your own? Luther laughed. She's Apache trash, a fugitive. You're all committing a crime by harboring her. Ayanna took a deep breath and walked forward, past Eli, past the barricade, into the open street where everyone could see her. "My name is Ayanna," she said, her voice carrying in the cold air. "Daughter of Kuruk, medicine man of the Chiricahua Apache. 2 years ago, your brother Cornelius wanted my people's land. We refused to leave. So you and he brought the cavalry and murdered 30 of us. Men, women, children. I watched you kill my father with your bare hands. I heard my mother scream before you shot her." Luther's face went dark red. "Lying savage." "I have proof." Ayanna held up the medicine bag. "My father's map to the gold you killed everyone for. His handwriting, dated 1 day before the massacre. Proof that Cornelius planned it all." "That's fake." "Then why are you so afraid of it?" Ayanna's eyes blazed. "Why did you chase us across the territory? Why burn an innocent man's home? Because you know the truth. You know what you did. And you know that if this evidence reaches a federal marshal, you hang." The town had gone completely silent. Even Luther's men were shifting uncomfortably in their saddles. "You have until sunrise," Luther said, his voice shaking with rage. "Give me the woman and that map, or we burn this whole place to the ground, just like we burned Coulter's cabin." He wheeled his horse and rode out, his men following. Mercer turned to the assembled crowd. "You heard him. We have until dawn. Anyone who wants to leave, leave now. No judgment." 3 families packed up and rode out in the darkness. The rest stayed. "Then we fight," Eli said, "and we win." Ayanna looked at the people around her. People who barely knew her, but were willing to stand against evil. She thought about her father, about the 30 people who'd died because no one would stand with them. Not this time. This time, good people were standing up. This time, she wasn't alone. The night before the battle, Canyon Springs prepared for war. Eli worked through the darkness, positioning defenders, his 10 years as an Army scout coming back like muscle memory. Riflemen on the general store roof with clear sight lines. Barricades reinforced with anything heavy they could find. Escape routes marked through the back canyon in case the fight went bad. Ezekiel Freeman's forge glowed red all night, the massive blacksmith hammering out iron reinforcements for doors, sharpening blades, casting bullets. His powerful arms never stopped moving, sweat gleaming on his dark skin, despite the February cold. The women turned the church basement into a field hospital. Rosa Martinez taught the other women how to pack wounds, how to make tourniquets, which herbs would fight infection. Ayanna worked beside her, sharing Apache medicine knowledge that went back generations. Katie helped organize supplies with the fierce concentration of an 8-year-old given important work. "Bandages here, whiskey there, clean water in these jugs," she instructed the other children. When one boy asked why they needed whiskey, she fixed him with a serious stare. "For cleaning wounds, not drinking. Miss Rosa says infection kills more than bullets." But it was what happened at midnight that changed everything. Ayanna was checking the barricades when she heard hoofbeats. A single rider, coming fast from the west. Every gun in town swung toward the sound. "Hold fire," Mercer called. "That's one of ours." The rider was an Apache scout, his horse nearly dead from exhaustion. He dismounted and spoke rapidly to Mercer in a mixture of English and Navajo. "Message from Tom Greyfeather," Mercer translated, his face grave. "He's been delayed at Fort McDowell. Indian agent trouble. Won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. Maybe 30 hours from now." The news hit like a physical blow. 36 hours. Luther's deadline was sunrise, 6 hours away. "We're on our own," Eli said quietly. The scout wasn't finished. "Marshal Greyfeather says he has arrest warrants, federal warrants, for both Blackwood brothers, murder, trafficking, land fraud. If you can hold until he arrives, he can end this legally." "If we can hold," Rosa repeated bitterly. "We're farmers and shopkeepers. They're professional killers." "Then we be smart." Ayana's voice cut through the despair. "We don't fight like soldiers. We fight like Apache." All eyes turned to her. "What does that mean?" Mercer asked. "It means we make them come to us. Make them fight on our terms. Use the terrain. Use surprise." Ayana's mind was racing, remembering her father's war stories, her people's tactics against cavalry. "Luther expects us to meet him head-on at sunrise, so we don't. We let him come into town. Then we hit him from all sides at once." "That's suicide," someone protested. "No, it's tactics." Eli was nodding, seeing it. "Classic ambush strategy. Draw them into the kill zone before they know they're in danger. We did it against Comanche raiders. Works every time if you have the discipline to hold fire." They spent the next hour refining the plan. Barricades that looked defensive but were actually funnels, channeling Luther's men exactly where they wanted them. False positions on the rooftops to draw initial fire. Real shooters hidden in windows and doorways, waiting for the perfect moment. And Ayana would be the bait. "Absolutely not," Eli said when she proposed it. "It has to be me. Luther wants me. If I'm visible, standing in the open, he'll focus on me. Won't see the trap until it's too late. And if he just shoots you from 50 yards out? He won't. Cornelius wants me alive. Wants the map. Luther might hate me, but he follows his brother's orders." Ayana touched Eli's face. "Trust me, I know how these men think. I survived 2 years of them." Becca spoke up from where she'd been listening. "Let her do it, Papa. We didn't run from Silver Ridge just to hide now." "You should be in the church basement with your sisters." "I'm 14. Mama was married at 14. I can load rifles and carry ammunition. So can Joe." "Me too," Maggie added, appearing from the shadows. Eli looked at his daughters, at Ayana, at the town full of people ready to fight for what was right. Finally, he nodded. "All right, but at the first sign this goes wrong, you run. All of you. Promise me." "We promise," they said. But Ayana saw the look in Becca's eyes, the same look Sarah must have had. They'd run if they had to, but they'd fight first. The hours before dawn crawled by like wounded animals. Ayana sat on the church steps, unable to sleep, watching the eastern sky for the first hint of sunrise. Sari found her there, the little girl slipping out of the church basement where she was supposed to be sleeping. "Mama Aya?" The child climbed into her lap. "Are the bad men coming?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you scared?" Ayana thought about lying, about giving comfort, but she'd never lied to these girls. "Very scared." "Me too." Sari snuggled closer. "But Papa says being scared is okay. It means you're smart enough to know danger. Being brave means doing what's right, even when you're scared." "Your Papa's a wise man." "I know." Sari was quiet for a moment. Then, "If the bad men take you away, will you come back to us?" Ayana's heart broke. "I'm not going anywhere, little one. I promise." "Good, because I already lost one Mama. I don't want to lose another." They sat together as the stars faded and the sky began to lighten. pink and gold spreading across the horizon, beautiful and terrible. The last dawn some of them would see. Eli found them there. It's time. Ayanna carried Sari back to the church basement, kissed her forehead, and made her promise to stay hidden no matter what she heard. Then she walked back out into the cold morning air and took her position in the center of town. The plan was simple. Ayanna would stand visible in the street. When Luther and his men rode in, they'd see her alone and undefended. They'd advance, confident, and when they reached the kill zone marked by a white stone Ezekiel had positioned, the town would open fire from all sides. Simple, deadly, terrifying. Ayanna stood alone in the street, her father's medicine bag around her neck, the map in her pocket. The early morning sun cast long shadows. Her breath made white clouds in the cold air, and in the distance she heard hoofbeats. 7 riders appeared on the eastern ridge, Luther in front, 6 hired guns behind him. They saw her standing there, and Luther's laugh carried across the valley. "Well, well, the Apache finally shows some sense." They rode slowly down the slope toward town. Ayanna could see Luther's face now, the cruel satisfaction there. He thought he'd won, thought she'd given up. "Smart girl," Luther called out. "Hand over the map, and we'll make this quick." "I want to talk to Cornelius," Ayanna shouted back. "Face to face. I'll negotiate, but only with him." Luther reined in his horse 30 yards away. "My brother's coming with 15 more men. Be here within the hour. But I don't think we need to wait that long." 15 more? Ayanna's blood went cold. The scout hadn't mentioned reinforcements. "You're lying." "Am I?" Luther grinned. "Cornelius, don't take chances. 22 men total against your farmer friends. How do you think that ends?" Around her, Ayanna felt the hidden defenders shifting, fear rippling through them. 22 men, not 7. The odds had just gotten much worse. But she couldn't show fear, couldn't let Luther see doubt. "Then we'll wait for him," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'll give him the map myself. But I have conditions." "You ain't in a position to demand anything." "I'm in a position to burn this map right here and now. Your brother wants the gold? He talks to me, personally." Luther's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Ayanna thought he'd just shoot her and be done with it. But greed won out over rage. Cornelius would kill him if he destroyed their only lead to 30 pounds of gold. "Fine," Luther spat. "We wait, but try anything clever, and I'll kill every person in this town, starting with those little girls of Coulter's." He withdrew to the edge of town, his men dismounting to wait. Ayanna walked back toward the church, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. Eli met her halfway. 22 men? If he's not lying. We can't hold against 22. We have to try. Greyfeather's coming. We just need to survive until he gets here. That's 30+ hours away. Mercer joined them, his Quaker calm finally cracking. "Some families are asking to leave. They're terrified. I can't say I blame them." "How many?" Eli asked. "Maybe a dozen. That leaves us with 30 defenders against 22 professional guns." The morning sun climbed higher. An hour passed, then 2. The tension in Canyon Springs was unbearable. Defenders in position, waiting, watching. Luther's men lounging at the town edge, confident and patient. Then, at mid-morning, dust appeared on the horizon. A large group riding hard. Cornelius Blackwood, with 15 armed riders. The sight of them made Ayana's stomach drop. These weren't the rough hired guns Luther had brought. These were professional soldiers, moving in formation, weapons at the ready. Cornelius had brought an army. Cornelius himself rode at the center, immaculate in an expensive suit despite the journey, his silver hair perfectly combed. He looked like a banker or politician. But Ayana knew the cruelty behind those cold eyes. He rode directly to where Luther waited, conferred briefly, then turned his horse toward town. Alone. "I'm told you want to negotiate," Cornelius called out. "I'm here. Let's talk like civilized people." Ayana walked out to meet him, ignoring Eli's protest. This had to be her. This confrontation had been 2 years coming. Up close, Cornelius was older than she remembered. Maybe 55, with lines around his eyes and gray in his beard. But his eyes were the same. Empty, soulless. "Ayana," he said pleasantly, like greeting an old friend, "you've led us on quite a chase. You murdered my people. I acquired land through legal means. If some savages happen to be in the way, that's unfortunate but hardly murder. You planned it. My father's map proves it." Cornelius's pleasant facade cracked slightly. "That map is mine. Your father stole my gold." "The gold was on Apache land. You stole the land after massacring everyone who could protest." "Semantics." Cornelius waved a hand dismissively. "Here's what's going to happen. You give me that map. I take you back to Silver Ridge where you belong. And these people go back to their lives. Everyone wins. And if I refuse, then I burn this settlement to the ground and take the map from your corpse." His voice went cold. "I have 22 men, Ayana. You have farmers with squirrel rifles. This isn't a negotiation. It's a courtesy." "A courtesy?" Ayana laughed bitterly. "Like the courtesy you showed my mother before you shot her?" "I didn't shoot anyone. I hired men to enforce a legal land claim. Not my fault if they were enthusiastic about it." The casual dismissal of 30 murders made Ayana's hands shake with rage, but she forced herself to stay calm. "U.S. Marshal Greyfeather is coming. He has federal warrants for you and Luther, for murder, trafficking, fraud." For the first time, real fear flickered across Cornelius's face. "Greyfeather can't touch me. I own the territorial governor." Owned. Past tense. He resigned last month. Federal jurisdiction now. Cornelius's jaw tightened. "Greyfeather's 3 days away. You'll all be dead by then." "Maybe. But the map goes with me. Burn it with my body, and you'll never find that gold." They stared at each other. Ayana could see him calculating, weighing options. Finally, he said, "1 hour. I'll give you 1 hour to think about it. Hand over the map and yourself, or we attack. And Ayana, when we attack, we don't leave survivors. That's a promise." He rode back to his men. Ayana returned to find the town in chaos. Half the remaining families were packing to leave. Can't blame them, she thought. Can't fight this many men. "We can't hold," Mercer said, his voice heavy. "Not against 22. I'm sorry, but I can't ask these people to die for a fight we can't win." "Then I'll go." Ayana's voice was quiet but firm. "Give me a horse. I'll ride out with the map. Draw them away from here." "No," Eli grabbed her arm. "We're not doing that. It's the only way to save these people." "There's another way." Everyone turned to see Ezekiel standing there, his massive frame silhouetted against the sun. "We send riders, fast riders to every settlement within 20 miles. Tell them what's happening. Tell them Blackwood's here with an army to murder innocent people. That would take hours, Rosa protested. We have an hour before Cornelius attacks. In that hour, we send 10 riders in different directions. By tonight, 300 people will know what Blackwood tried to do here, and some of them will come. Maybe not in time for the first fight, but in time for the second, the third. You're talking about making a stand, Mercer said slowly. I'm talking about making this the place where Blackwood's reign ends. Right here, right now. Ezekiel's voice rang with conviction. We hold for 1 day, 1 single day. Greyfeather will be here tomorrow, and every hour we hold, more people arrive to help. Ayanna felt hope kindle in her chest. Not hope that they'd survive. Hope that their stand would mean something. I'll send the riders, Mercer said, but I need volunteers to hold the town, knowing they might not survive the day. Silence fell. Then Rosa stood. I volunteer. Blackwood killed my husband. Time he paid for it. I volunteer, Ezekiel said. Me too, Becca added, her young voice strong. One by one, people stood. Not everyone, but enough. 30 defenders willing to hold against 22 professional guns for 1 impossible day. Eli looked at Ayanna. Still think you should run? No, I think we should fight. Good. He pulled her close and kissed her hard. Because I'm done running. Done letting evil win because good people won't stand. The hour passed too quickly. At noon exactly, Cornelius rode forward again. Time's up. What's your answer? Ayanna stepped out to meet him one last time. This time Eli was beside her, and behind them, the entire town stood visible. Men, women, even some of the older children, all armed, all ready. Here's our answer, Ayanna said. We stand, we fight, and we tell the whole territory what you are. A murderer, a thief, a coward who sends men to do his killing. Cornelius's face went purple with rage. You'll all die. Maybe, Eli said calmly, but we'll die free, and you'll hang for murder. That map? Already copied and sent to 3 different towns. Greyfeather's going to have all the evidence he needs, even if you kill us all. It was a bluff. The map hadn't been copied. But Cornelius didn't know that. Kill them, Cornelius screamed. Kill them all! The battle for Canyon Springs had begun. The first shots came at noon, shattering the desert silence like breaking glass. Cornelius's men charged the town in a disciplined line, 15 riders with Luther's 6 bringing up the rear. They came fast and hard, guns blazing, expecting to overwhelm the settlement through pure firepower and terror. They rode straight into Eli's trap. The defenders held fire. Discipline hammered into them through Eli's insistence during the planning. Wait, he'd told them. Wait until you can see their eyes. Wait until every shot counts. The riders reached the white stone marker Ezekiel had positioned. The kill zone. Now, Eli roared. 30 rifles spoke at once from windows, doorways, rooftops. The coordinated volley tore through the charging line like a scythe through wheat. 3 men went down immediately, dead before they hit the ground. 2 more fell wounded, horses screaming and throwing riders. The charge dissolved into chaos. Reload, Eli commanded. Second volley. But Cornelius's men were professionals. They scattered, taking cover behind water troughs and buildings, returning fire with deadly accuracy. A bullet smashed the window next to where Ayanna crouched, showering her with glass. Another punched through the wall, inches from Rosa's head. The battle descended into a brutal exchange of gunfire. Defenders shooting from concealment, attackers trying to maneuver closer. Smoke and noise and the acrid smell of gunpowder filling the air. Joe was on the general store roof with 2 other sharpshooters. She'd never killed anything bigger than a deer, but when one of Cornelius's men tried to flank their position, her arrow took him through the shoulder.
He went down hard, cursing, out of the fight. "Good shot," the man beside her shouted. "I was aiming for his chest," Joe admitted, notching another arrow with shaking hands. On the ground, Ezekiel fought like a man possessed. When 3 riders tried to rush the barricade, he met them with a hammer in one hand and a pistol in the other. The hammer crushed a man's arm. The pistol dropped another from his saddle. The third turned and ran, but there were too many of them. Cornelius had pulled back out of rifle range, directing his men like pieces on a chessboard. And slowly, inevitably, they were pushing the defenders back. "We can't hold," Mercer shouted to Eli. "They're going to overrun us." "Then we fall back to the church." Eli fired 3 quick shots, forcing 2 attackers into cover. "Fighting retreat! Keep formation!" The defenders began pulling back in stages, some covering while others moved. It was textbook military tactics, the kind Eli had learned in 10 years of frontier warfare. But these weren't soldiers. They were shopkeepers and farmers and freed slaves who'd never fought a battle in their lives. People were getting hit. Old Mr. Chen took a bullet through the leg and went down screaming. Rosa dragged him to cover, already working to stop the bleeding. A woman named Mary got grazed across the ribs, kept fighting despite the blood streaming down her side. And young Jacob Stone, the hunter who'd been courting Becca, caught a round through the shoulder that spun him around and dropped him like a stone. "Jacob!" Becca screamed. "Stay down!" Eli grabbed his daughter before she could run out into the open. "He's alive. Rosa will get to him." But the casualties were mounting. 6 defenders wounded, 2 seriously, and Cornelius still had 18 men standing. They made it to the church, barricaded the doors, positioned shooters at every window. The building was solid stone, built to last. It would hold, for a while. Cornelius called out from his cover, "You're trapped. Surrender now, and I'll let the women and children live." "He's lying," Ayanna shouted to the defenders. "He doesn't leave witnesses. We fight or we die." As if to prove her point, one of Cornelius's men threw a torch toward the church. It fell short, sputtering out in the dirt. But the message was clear. They'd burn the church with everyone inside if they had to. "We need a miracle," Mercer said quietly, reloading his rifle with steady hands, despite the Quaker prohibition against violence. Sometimes, he'd decided, standing against evil required breaking your own rules. The miracle arrived 30 minutes later. Ayanna heard it first. Hoofbeats. Many horses coming fast from the west. For a terrible moment, she thought it was more of Cornelius's men. Then she saw the riders crest the ridge. 20 men, maybe more, and at their head, riding a paint horse with the bearing of someone born to command, was a Navajo man in a U.S. Marshal's badge. Tom Greyfeather had arrived 6 hours early, pushing his horses to the breaking point. "Federal Marshal!" Greyfeather's voice boomed across the battlefield. "Cornelius Blackwood, Luther Blackwood, you are under arrest for murder, human trafficking, and conspiracy. Lay down your weapons." Cornelius's face went white. "You have no jurisdiction." "I have federal warrants signed by the territorial judge," Greyfeather held up papers. "And I have 12 Apache scouts plus 8 U.S. cavalry backing me. You're surrounded." For the first time, fear cracked Cornelius's composure. He looked around at his men, at Greyfeather's force,
at the church full of defenders who'd held longer than any hired gun had expected. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I own judges. I own politicians. You think some piece of paper scares me?" "I think 30 counts of murder scares you," Greyfeather said calmly. "And I think the testimony of 6 escaped victims scares you. And I think that map in Ayana's pocket, the one proving you planned the massacre for gold, absolutely terrifies you." Cornelius's hand moved toward his gun. Luther was faster. He drew and fired at Greyfeather in one smooth motion. The bullet went wide. Return fire from the cavalry dropped Luther from his saddle, wounded but alive. His gun clattered to the ground. "Anyone else want to resist federal arrest?" Greyfeather asked mildly. Cornelius's men looked at each other, looked at the cavalry, looked at the odds. One by one, they dropped their weapons. Cornelius was the last. He stood there, surrounded by dead and wounded men, his empire crumbling around him. Finally, with a snarl of pure hatred, he threw down his pistol. "You haven't won," he spat at Ayana. "I'll be out in a year. My lawyers will tear your testimony apart. It's your word against mine, and you're just a savage." Ayana walked out of the church, past the barricades, right up to Cornelius Blackwood. She pulled out her father's medicine bag and held it where everyone could see. "I'm the last witness to what you did," she said. "I watched you give the order. I heard you tell Luther to spare no one. I saw you ride away with stolen gold while my people burned." "Prove it." Ayana opened the bag and pulled out the map. "My father's handwriting, dated February 12, 1876, one day before the massacre. It shows where he hid gold on Apache land you claimed was legally yours." She handed the map to Greyfeather. "And this," she continued, holding up the deed her father had died protecting, "is your deed to that land, the one you filed with the territorial governor, dated February 13th, 1876, the same day you murdered 30 Apache people to steal their land." Greyfeather examined both documents. "You filed a claim on land the very day its occupants were killed. That's not coincidence, Mr. Blackwood. That's premeditation." "Plus," a new voice called out, "I have testimony from 6 women he trafficked, 3 of them underage. That's federal crime right there." A native woman had stepped forward from the crowd, Sarah Littlefoot. She held up her own papers. "I documented everything," she said. "Names, dates, locations. 3 weeks ago, I gave sworn testimony to the U.S. Attorney in Tucson. You're done, Blackwood." Cornelius looked around wildly, searching for an escape that didn't exist. His men were in chains. His brother was wounded and captured. His carefully constructed empire of violence and corruption was falling apart in front of his eyes. "This is all lies," he screamed. "Fabrications! I'm a respected businessman. You can't do this to me." "Watch me," Greyfeather said. He nodded to his men. "Chain them both. They're going to Fort McDowell to await trial." As the cavalry moved to arrest him, Cornelius made one last desperate lunge for Ayana. His hands reached for her throat, hate twisting his features into something barely human. Eli hit him so hard, the sound echoed across the valley. Cornelius went down like a felled tree, blood streaming from his broken nose. He didn't get back up. "Touch her again, and I'll kill you," Eli said quietly. "Federal prisoner or not." They chained Cornelius hand and foot, chained Luther beside him. The brothers who'd murdered for gold and power, reduced to criminals in irons. As they were hauled away, Luther looked at Ayanna one last time. "You think you've won? You're still nothing. Still just a savage. Always will be." Ayanna met his eyes without flinching. "I'm Chiricahua Apache, daughter of Kuruk, the medicine man, survivor of your cruelty. And I'm free. You're the one in chains, Luther. You'll spend the rest of your life in a cage, just like you put me in. That's justice." The battle was over. Canyon Springs began counting the cost. 3 defenders dead. Old Mr. Rodriguez, who'd fought in the Mexican War. Young Samuel Hart, barely 20, who'd stood his ground when others ran. And Ezekiel Freeman, the massive blacksmith, had taken a bullet through the chest, protecting Rosa from a flanking attack. He'd killed the attacker, ensured Rosa's safety, then quietly sat down against the wall of his forge and bled out before anyone could help him. They found him there, still sitting, the hammer still in his hand. "He saved my life," Rosa wept over his body. "Said he'd be damned if Blackwood took anyone else he loved." The town buried their dead that evening as the sun set over the mountains. Mercer said the words. Ayanna sang an Apache death chant that made the cavalry scouts bow their heads in respect. And they planted 3 crosses on the hill overlooking Canyon Springs, a reminder of what freedom cost. 6 of Cornelius's men were dead. 2 more would die of their wounds before morning. The rest would stand trial as accomplices. That night, exhausted and grieving and alive, the defenders of Canyon Springs gathered in the church. Greyfeather stood before them, his weathered face solemn. "What you did here today will be remembered," he said. 30 people stood against 22 guns, stood for justice, stood for what's right. 3 of you paid the ultimate price, but you won. You proved that good people standing together can defeat evil. "Will they hang?" someone asked. "Cornelius and Luther?" "Federal court will decide, but with the evidence we have?" Greyfeather nodded. "They'll hang, both of them. And every piece of land they stole will be returned to the Apache people. That's a promise." He turned to Ayanna. "Your father would be proud. You finished what he started." 2 months later, on a warm April morning, Elijah Coulter and Ayanna were married. The wedding took place in Canyon Springs, in the church they'd defended together. The whole settlement attended, plus delegation from 3 neighboring towns who'd heard about the stand against Blackwood. Red Skywalker had traveled 3 days to perform the ceremony, blending Apache and Cherokee traditions in a way that honored both Sarah's memory and Ayanna's heritage. Ayanna wore a white deerskin dress decorated with turquoise and silver, traditional Apache wedding garb that Rosa and the other women had spent weeks making. Around her neck hung her father's medicine bag and the turquoise necklace Red Sky had given her. Eli wore clean buckskins, his wild beard trimmed but not tamed, his long hair brushed and tied back. He looked every inch the mountain man, strong and solid and real. The 5 girls stood as attendants, dressed in their best clothes. Becca had woven a traditional Cherokee blanket as her gift, each color representing a blessing. Joe had made Ayanna a bow, perfectly balanced and beautiful. Maggie presented a painting of the whole family, including Ayanna, sitting together on the cabin porch. Katie gave a collection of healing herbs with careful instructions written in her neat child's hand. And Sari simply climbed into Ayanna's lap and announced, "Now you're my mama forever. Forever and always, Ayanna promised, tears streaming down her face. Red Skywalker spoke in Apache, then English, then Cherokee, honoring all three peoples represented in this union. Two paths meet today, he said, mountain and desert, Cherokee and Apache, a widower with 5 daughters, and a woman who survived the unthinkable. But you are not joining out of convenience or necessity. You join because you choose each other, because you fought for each other, because you love each other. He held up 2 cords, one braided from Cherokee materials, one from Apache. He wove them together as he spoke. Sarah Coulter blessed this union from the spirit world when she taught her daughters to see all people as kin. Kuruk blessed it when he hid that map, knowing it would bring his daughter to safety. Your ancestors walk with you, your families stand beside you, and the Creator smiles on this day. The vows were simple. Eli spoke first. Ayanna, you taught me to live again after I thought living was done. You showed me that fighting for justice is worth any cost. You became a mother to my daughters and a partner to my soul. I promise to stand beside you, not ahead or behind, but beside you, as equals, as partners, as husband and wife. Ayanna's voice shook but held. Elijah, you saw me when I was invisible, freed me when I was caged, loved me when I was broken. You gave me a family when I thought I'd lost everything. I promise to be your wife, mother to your daughters, and keeper of your heart, to fight beside you, to build with you, to love you until the stars fall from the sky. They exchanged rings, Sarah's Cherokee silver band for Ayanna, a new ring for Eli, made from melted Spanish silver coins by the apprentice blacksmith training in Ezekiel's forge. By the power of the Creator and the witness of this community, Red Skywalker declared, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride, mountain man. The kiss was tender and deep and full of promise. The church erupted in cheers. That night there was dancing and music, Apache drums blending with frontier fiddles. Children ran wild through the streets. Old people told stories. Young people fell in love. Tom Greyfeather attended as guest of honor, bringing news from the trial. Cornelius and Luther had both been convicted on all counts. They would hang within the month. The Apache gold had been recovered and would fund a new reservation for Chiricahua survivors. Land rights were being restored. Justice, slow and imperfect, but real. There's something else, Greyfeather said to Ayanna and Eli privately. The territorial government wants to make Canyon Springs an official town. Legal charter, protection, representation. They're calling it a symbol of what the new Arizona can be, where all people are welcome, where justice means something. What do you think, wife? Eli asked, the words still new and wonderful on his tongue. Ayanna looked around at the town they'd defended, at the people who'd stood with them, at the 5 girls who'd become her daughters, and the man who'd become her everything. I think we're home, she said. 1 year later, in the spring of 1879, Ayanna gave birth to a son. They named him Kuruk Elijah Coulter, honoring both grandfathers. The baby had his mother's dark hair and his father's blue eyes, and from his first day, his 5 older sisters treated him like a prince. Canyon Springs had grown to 200 families. Ayanna ran a school teaching Apache and Cherokee culture, language, and medicine. Students came from 3 territories to learn from her. Eli served as town marshal, using his tracking skills and mountain knowledge to keep the peace. The girls were thriving. Becca was engaged to Tom Greyfeather's nephew, planning to become a teacher herself. Jo had been accepted into a prestigious academy in Tucson, but chose to stay home, saying her family needed her more than she needed book learning. Maggie's artwork was being shown in galleries. Katie had become Rosa's apprentice, learning medicine from two traditions. And Sari, now 7, followed Ayanna everywhere, learning to be an Apache woman in a changing world. On a warm evening, Ayanna sat on the porch of their new cabin, larger than the one Luther had burned, built by the whole community. She nursed baby Kuruk while watching the sun set over the Superstition Mountains. Eli came out and sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders.
"Thinking about anything particular?" he asked. "Everything." Ayanna smiled. "I was thinking about a cage in Silver Ridge, about a mountain man who stopped when everyone else walked past, about 5 girls who called me family before they even knew me, about standing against evil and winning. Any regrets?" "Not a single one." She leaned into his warmth. "They left me in that cage to die, called me savage, called me property, told me I was nothing. You were never nothing. I know that now." Ayanna looked at the family surrounding her. 5 daughters reading and laughing on the porch steps, a son sleeping peacefully in her arms, a husband who'd fought an army to keep her safe, a town that had become home. A widowed mountain man with a wild beard and a big heart saw a woman worth saving, she said softly. "Together, we built something no cage, no fire, no hatred could ever destroy. A family, a home, a future." Eli kissed the top of her head. "And we're just getting started." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Ayanna thought about her father's words. The strongest medicine isn't in herbs or rituals. It's in standing up when it's easier to fall down. She'd stood up. They all had. And they'd won. In the distance, a coyote howled at the rising moon. Sari looked up from her book. "That's a good sound," the little girl said. "Mama Aya says coyotes are tricksters. They survive when everyone thinks they can't." "Like us," Maggie added. "Exactly like us," Ayanna agreed. The family sat together as night fell, safe and free and whole. And somewhere in the stars above, 2 spirits smiled. Sarah Coulter and Kuruk, the medicine man, watching over the family they'd helped create through love and sacrifice, and the simple courage to do what was right. The cage was empty now. The fire was out. The evil men were gone, and justice, hard won and dearly bought, had finally been served. The end.